What is the biggest life insurance policy in terms of the anticipated death benefit? And relatedly, who owns it? This is the kind of stuff I think about. Let's see if we can find out.
In 1936, the Chicago Tribune newspaper reported on the biggest insurance policies that were in force at the time. At the top of that list was industrialist Pierre S. Dupont, a prominent businessman and then president of the chemical manufacturing company that bears his name. His policy was worth $7 million in 1936. It got me wondering, what is the biggest life insurance policy today? I'll start by noting that the average size term policy today falls somewhere between $126,000 and $500,000. But in today's dollars, Pierre Dupont's $7 million policy would be worth a whopping $131 million. Can we find a current policy that big? A couple of Google searches led me to 3 candidates: an alleged $201 million policy owned by an unspecified Silicon Valley business person, a possible $212 million policy, and a staggering claim that famed director Stephen Spielberg may have a life insurance contract worth $1.2 billion.
The Spielberg claim is so astounding, I decided to dedicate an entire video to it. For my conclusions, see that presentation. Suffice it to say that I had some issues with the claim, so I'll just be looking into the other 2 candidates here.
Let's look at the publicly available evidence for each of these, starting with the largest one. An alleged $212 million policy supposedly sold by an agent named Tony Steigerwald. This claim shows up on a handful of insurance industry blog posts, complete with a brief explanation of why the mysterious but patently uber-wealthy client wanted such a large payout. The caveats here are that the information is from sources of unknown credibility and that the information is a bit conflicting. For example, in the case of one article, apparently careless text layout leads to potential confusion about just who was actually making this claim to have sold the prize policy. In one place, the claim is in close proximity to the name Jeff Rose, while in another location in the very same post, it's attributed to Steigerwald instead. To make matters even more confusing, the same article elsewhere appears to have Steigerwald describing his, quote, biggest case as one worth $15 million. Still, Steigerwald's agency does seem willing to lay claim to the more lucrative sale. My verdict, therefore, is maybe the claim is true after all, but there isn't much by way of evidence. The third candidate is a supposed $201 million policy sold to an unspecified Silicon Valley entrepreneur. And this claim has the best legs under it, evidentially speaking. For example, it was reported by Forbes, as well as by CNBC, Yahoo Finance, and the New York Daily News, and I'm sure many others. In its article, CNN gave both the agent's name, Israeli-American venture capitalist Dovi Frances, as well as the source for the information in the first place, the Guinness Book of World Records. In Guinness's post, we're told that the record has been confirmed, and that the face amount more than doubles the record previously held by agent Peter Rosengard, whose $100 million sale is, or was, allegedly owned by film studio mogul David Geffen. In the face of this evidence, the $201 million policy report seems credible. So here are my conclusions. But who owns the $201 million policy? Since life insurance contracts are not generally matters of public record, the identity of the owner has not been revealed. But Guinness describes the person as, quote, a well-known billionaire who resides in the Silicon Valley area of California and is actively known in the technology space. Finding a list of potentials isn't too difficult. For example, I gleaned this one from Business Insider. Removing those people who are not known in, quote, the technology space, we're left with about 20 names. But there's little question that of these, the best-known billionaires include 6 celebrities: Twitter's Jack Dorsey, Tesla's Elon Musk, Google's co-founders Sergey Brin and Larry Page, Oracle's Larry Ellison, and of course, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg. Of course, the name Bill Gates may naturally come to mind here, and he certainly fits the bill, no pun intended, in many ways. However, Guinness Book's report clearly indicates that the policyholder lives in California, and if Wikipedia is to be believed at any rate, it appears that Gates's primary residence is in Washington state. So, it's unlikely to be him. In this specific case, according to the Associated Press, the billionaire in question, quote, purchased the insurance to help heirs avoid paying a 45% inheritance tax. Many super wealthy people are taking out big loans because interest rates are low. These loans are to be paid in full immediately upon death, cutting into a billionaire's cash holdings. For more insight into this latter motivation, you might check out some of the videos by popular finance YouTuber Graham Stephan. Although he doesn't get into life insurance per se, as far as I've seen, he does speak to the issue of wealthy individuals leveraging credit and loan money, especially in low interest rate environments.
Additionally, they likely have numerous advisors, both personally and in their business lives. So they may have any number of reasons for purchasing a life insurance policy at any number of different times.
Another possible factor is psychology. Sometimes insurance is thought of as a conservative strategy for people who are risk-averse. Arguably, these entrepreneurs all have reputations as risk takers.
Still, if a $201 million policy exists, then somebody owns it. Therefore, whether I have identified the correct candidates or not, some risk taker felt that a risk transfer strategy was appropriate in at least one area of life. Admittedly, though, I am wading into a world of sheer speculation here. The actual owner may not be any of the people that I have somewhat whimsically designated as my candidates. Please take all of this with a grain of salt and for entertainment purposes only. However, just for fun, I thought I would walk through one consideration that is often a factor when people choose to take out a life insurance policy. Life events.
Life events are major changes in one's circumstances. These could be personal things, such as significant changes in one's relationship status, or the birth of children or grandchildren, but it could also involve business-related changes.
In the case of billionaires at the helm of massive corporations, this could involve quite a lot. Much more than I could hope to get into here at any rate. But with all of these caveats in mind, the following tidbits are possibly relevant.
I'll start with candidates that I think least likely. I mentioned Jack Dorsey because he's been in the news recently and he's certainly wealthy. But he's one of the youngest people on my list. As far as I can tell, he's not married, and I don't see that he has any kids. So he's not a strong candidate for having much life insurance at all, let alone owning the biggest policy in the world. So probably not him. Larry Page is just a few years older than Dorsey. He is married, but he had been married for almost 7 years in 2014. He has kids, but they were born in 2009 and 2011, respectively. In 2013, he publicized the fact that he struggles with a rare vocal cord paralytic disorder, but accounts reveal that he has been dealing with it for over a decade and that with treatment, it's not obviously fatal. I'm not seeing a hugely compelling case for Larry Page. Mark Zuckerberg is arguably one of the most famous people on this list, but he's also the youngest, at 36 now, which would have made him 30 in 2014. He and his wife did welcome their first child in 2015, but a bit more relevant perhaps for our purposes is the fact that tragically she had 3 miscarriages prior to that. It wouldn't surprise me to learn that Mark had reflected on family and life about the time this policy was being written. But is this a good enough reason to think that he owns it? I doubt it. Who knows? Let me throw in eBay exec Jeffrey Skoll, who did have an obvious life event around the time we're interested in. He tied the knot in 2014, and this major life change followed hard on the heels of a serious bout with illness. Now, when wealthy people get married, having some sort of prenuptial agreement is not out of the ordinary, and conjoining life insurance with such a prenup isn't unheard of either. Perhaps I truncated my list a bit prematurely. To get back to my main 6, however, I note that Larry Ellison, who is now age 76, is at that stage of life where legacy and estate planning are common for anyone, let alone for a billionaire with an arguable penchant for the number 200 million. Still, I don't see any clear triggering life event. Elon Musk certainly has a strange-looking case with multiple past love interests and connections to some 7 children. Right around the time this policy was in the works, Musk married actress Tallulah Riley for the 2nd time, only to divorce her again following that reprised wedding. We've already connected life insurance to prenuptial agreements, so I don't know. It could be him. Possibly. And then there's Google co-founder Sergey Brin. He got mixed up in a public affair in 2013, and his resultant divorce was finalized 2 years later. Brin and his wife did have a prenup, but his situation brings up one additional possibility, that the huge life insurance policy was obtained as part of a court order. In complex cases, with lots of money involved, such an arrangement is sometimes put into place. On the other hand, though, while it's reasonable to suppose that a judge might order the purchase of life insurance, is it reasonable to think that a judge would order a world record-breaking life insurance policy? I have no idea. The actual identity of the owner may never be revealed, but one of these people just may be Pierre Dupont's successor for the title most insured person in America. Or could it be someone else?